Okay, so let us go ahead and try to talk about SQL Server. Um, so there's that Azure SQL related stuff. So first of all, SQL Server or structured query language. So we save all the data in the database, and hence every company has it. It's not like every company will have it. It's that every company has it. So hopefully you have gone through some of the database maintenance. If you want to learn about the SQL Server database. High availability and mirroring and all those other features, then there's that SQL Server course that I've put there, and I think it's just $50, I think, or $25, I don't know. So the thing is that we should know about SQL. We should work on SQL, just like we should know about Linux as well, security as well, and hundreds of other things that we should know. Okay, no, but that's one of the more important ones. So let us go ahead and try to just explore that and create the SQL database of our own and connect to it, and then explore some of the features there. So Azure SQL managed instances that normally are there. So there are three ways that you can create SQL Server in Azure, and that is you can just create Azure SQL as a SaaS service, so storage, software as a service. Did I say storage? Okay, so and then Azure SQL managed instance, so you can create an instance, and inside the that you can create a database, and then there is a virtual machine that you can create and then install SQL Server instance and then create a database inside. So there are those three ways there. If we go ahead, Azure SQL needs globally unique names, so we will be creating our own SQL Server that is actually on the internet, and that's my SQL Server. It would just look like this, the whole path, and obviously you have to then secure it as it's on the internet there, right? And if we go ahead, if an app need to connect to Azure SQL from Azure VNet, so that is your own VNet that you've created. From there, if an application needs to connect, then the application has to go over the internet to access Azure SQL. So that is, Microsoft has, suppose you've separately created a SQL Server, and not SQL Server is not actually living inside the virtual network of Azure, but it is just separately created, and you do have your own VNet or virtual network created in Azure, where you have an application installed that needs to connect to the SQL Server. So in that case, from VNet, it has to go over the network internet to access that separate SQL Server instance. Or what you can do is you can just create a virtual machine inside the VNet here, and inside the virtual machine install, suppose it's an image of Windows Server 2016, and then install SQL Server on top of that, and then same VNet with private IP addresses, they can connect, and they don't have to go over the internet to connect to each other. So this is one type of configuration that you can do on Azure, that you can create over the internet, over Azure, a secure SQL Server, and then whatever application, maybe it's in Azure in a separate virtual network or VNet, or it is on premises, you can connect to this SQL Server from anywhere securely. Well, you have to enable those securities. So then there is the other way. It's a managed PaaS or platform as a service. So Microsoft is responsible for its underlying hardware or OS. So there's this underlying hardware. Obviously, Microsoft is really responsible for that. Otherwise, obviously, whatever's configured inside SQL Server is your responsibility. But whatever's underlying hardware, obviously, this is the statement. This is the basic statement of the cloud as well. So underlying hardware is Microsoft's responsibility, obviously. Azure SQL managed instance, in that case, you can just create a managed instance, which is just an image of a SQL Server already, installed, and we can deploy it within a VNet and apps within VNet can connect to it from Azure private network. So this is the second type.
Amir sir,
Yeah.
I have one question.
Yeah, sure.
If in the last slide you said that we need internet connectivity for connecting app server to Azure SQL server, right? I mean, if the Azure SQL server and the app server is the same region, then yeah, the internet is required for that as well.
Yes, so it's this example also is not talking about different regions. Even in the
Okay.
same region, it will be the same case if
Oh,
you go
okay.
for software as a service based SQL Server.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
Yeah. Okay, so then there is Azure SQL Managed Instance Database Subnet, and well, that's another way that just deploy an image of image where SQL is installed already with an operating system, and you just need to customize it. So and you can deploy that within VNet, and then only you can use the private IPs and private network of Azure. So if you separately, and this is the way we're going to create now, that it will be available over the Azure and accessible over the internet, just like any other instance or virtual machine we create over the internet. So we can create this one as well. But there are scenarios, many scenarios here, many types of deployments of SQL servers there. And then once we know the how we can deploy, how many types are there to so we can deploy the SQL, then we need to know then how to secure them as well. So Azure SQL Managed Instance, and we can deploy it. So that's if within the VNet you put that. So it's just like you have put in the local network there or local branch there, just like that. It's in Azure as well. It's very secure with the private network. You can connect, and then SQL in Azure Virtual Machine. So that's the next step. You go for pretty much everything manually. First, install virtual machine and configure. During virtual machine installation or deployment, you can just configure the CPU, RAM, and storage for that, and then there is operating system inside, and then you separately deploy a SQL Server inside yourself. So that would be then you just do everything yourself. We can create a VM ourselves and deploy SQL in it. So that would also be a VNet within. So you can just connect the two together, app server and the SQL server within the private network. So
Can you
this is, yeah.
what? Can you explain the second one? I didn't get that. The previous one.
Yeah, so this is you get an image for that where SQL is already deployed in the virtual machine. And and here third one and second one, if we compare, so third one, it's you just install a virtual machine with some operating system already there, but SQL is not installed. You just install it yourself, and then you can connect it to that. Or already installed SQL instance is there. You just customize it. But both, that's the only difference. SQL is already deployed there, and here you just go manual with everything.
Sir, which is the cost optimized option? I mean, is it service? The first choice is the most cost optimized option for us.
Actually, you know what? Suppose you have a company with 2,000 users and you have a company with 50,000 users. So 50,000 users will be suppose connecting to your application, and they'll be creating some kind of data there. So whichever type of SQL server in the background you have, in terms of cost, so you will have to see how much RAM and CPU and storage. So it depends on how much data you're going to be putting there, and it's going to cost pretty much kind of same. It's just the infrastructure you're choosing. Why are you choosing that instead of that? But in terms of cost, if there are 50,000 users network, pretty much it's there are some cost optimization tools like Elastic Pool. When we are about to create, I'm going to show you that. Other than that, no. If there's a 50,000 users creating data, all three types will pretty much cost the same in terms of underlying hardware usage for 50,000 users, the data they will create. But why would you then choose one from the other? The first one is that you can easily make it available for customers of, suppose you created in North America, and customers from Asia Pacific and from Europe are also connecting very easily with that database. Although these are also, second example and third example are also the same. But the thing is, you have to make a VPN connection there if you want to keep it just private network. This is available over the internet with actual URL as well. So it's a bit more easier to access for customers from around the planet. So that's one thing. And second thing is, when you're inside the VNet, you can just create a direct VPN connection, and it could still be private. But for nearest customers, within whichever region you created that, the customers in that region, you can connect through VPN. For customers in other continents, this is a better deployment there. But if you have overall huge amount of customers, so cost wise, not a very big difference. Then underlying hardware will be used the same way.
So, sir,
Okay.
all three options, all three examples, we have on cloud basically, right?
They
No.
all are cloud, exactly. Yes.
So one more thing, if
Yeah.
in cost, in terms of cost, if we get in third example, if we get the virtual machine, then storage and stuff like that, is it not gonna be more?
Well, we're just doing the work manually
Oh,
ourselves. And suppose again the example would be if there are 50,000 users in any case. So when we are creating this virtual machine just with an operating system, so the RAM and memory, RAM and CPU and storage will have to be exactly the same as you would choose for the second option here, as you would choose for the first option here.
okay, got it.
So, but we have to do it manually as well, and manually has more choices. So we can add some features, we can remove some features from the start, and if we are an advanced DBA, database administrator, so we have more flexibility to choose what we want to install and what we not want to install. Here, you may not have some choices there. It's a customized customization for an already installed SQL. Maybe they have installed some applications that you cannot remove. Maybe some options are it takes longer time to remove them. So you have more flexibility with the third option and less flexibility here. This is overall, it's over the internet, but obviously all three you can add and remove anything. It's just that how many choices you have and how soon you can implement what kind of features. So that's how they differentiate. Advanced users can go for this one, third one, and pretty much second one as well. First one is much more automated deployment, but obviously we have to know how database really works.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, guys, so here we talked about the three ways that we can deploy Azure SQL Server on Azure itself, and then then there are security overview there. Customer data normally is placed inside SQL Server, so obviously all hackers would be this database hacking would be their first and foremost attempt to steal all the data and use it or reveal it or just sell it to the rival company and earn millions, and your company crashes in the next few years. So this is the worst case scenario. Or but customer data is there, so that's why it's really important. We need to know how high availability can be introduced here, and we need to do a lot of that, and security. So Azure SQL Security Overview, we create a SQL Server to put customer data inside. We need to secure it through different mechanisms with multiple security layers. So what are those security layers? If we go ahead, so there's that network security first of all. Now this all diagram and effort was somebody else's, obviously, and thank you somebody else. But yes, I still have to explain that. Network security layer allows us to make sure which IP addresses and networks we connect to. So obviously this is what you have seen already in VNet as well. When you were creating VNet and you put some instance inside or virtual machine inside that network security level, you have ACLs there, access control list, you have security groups there, or a network security group in Azure is a security group in AWS. So now AZ104 course is going on, so we're going to go in depth with that too. So here, network security, obviously for SQL as well, you will use those mechanisms there. That from ACLs, you can just check that what kind of traffic from which subnet and which IP range are allowed, and from which IP addresses it's not allowed. So you can just control that, who can connect from which branch. Or suppose the administrator says, hey, it's COVID-19, so I'm connecting from home, right? You told me to stay home. So you have to add that administrator's public IP, and you have to make sure that it's a static public IP, or if the IP changes, then you have to arrange that as well. That either you go for dynamic services, DNS services there, or well, whatever you need to arrange. So the thing is that network security is there. If we go ahead a little, then there is access control. Access control takes care of authentication. Now this is not network related access control list. This is authentication and authorization, right? So this means that who is allowed and what level of changes that person is allowed. So are you getting authenticated? So this is your Azure Active Directory and your IAM, Identity and Access Management in AWS. All these, and you normally create a SQL user inside as well, right? So and you can attach a SQL Server to Azure Active Directory as well, and maybe you have done that before as well. So we're going to do that as well. So this is access control, which is other than network access control in network. So it is authentication. So the second level would be that first of all, where do they connect from, which IP ranges they connect from. Second thing is who is connecting and how much access you're giving to that person. This is, general security rules for any other virtual machine as well. This is not really SQL specific. But and then the third is threat protection. Threat protection takes care of unauthorized access and suspicious activities. So that would be threat protection is obviously when you put all the vulnerability assessments there, and also the ATP, which is advanced threat protection, which is a famous Azure feature that you can utilize. We talked about that in Office 365 as well, and here in SQL, obviously advanced threat protection does tries to go for any unauthorized access, suspicious activity. Suppose somebody failed 6 or 7 times trying to log in, and that's a suspicious activity, or any unusual activity. The guys normally connect from 9 to 5, but on Sunday night somebody connected, which is unusual, like it never happened, although it can happen easily, obviously. Okay, so work shift in the evening, I can't attend. Oh, okay. Okay, so here, but threat protection, obviously, whatever tools Microsoft has, and we're going to try to explore those. But we have seen those tools many times in Security Center. So what does it do? We already know, but we're going to check it in the context of SQL. So network security, access control, and threat protection, these are the areas. Then there is information protection, and that is how do you protect information? Do you encrypt that data at rest? Now this the data in the SQL is obviously at rest, so that is not moving. So do you encrypt that data, and how good is the encryption there? So that would be just the information protection. So 4 ways you can just try to go for network security, access control, threat protection, and information protection for SQL Server. So that's how you try to configure it. Now there's that lab as well. Create Azure SQL
Sorry,
Server.
in the last slide, the information protection, that means, is it also covered the data classifications and all those stuffs?
Exactly, yes.
Oh,
So
okay.
classification of data, and then you can just give access according to who has whatever status, or who is belonging to whichever department. So all
Okay.
that is also included in that information. So information protection, yeah. And so if we go ahead, there's that create Azure SQL Server in East region. Yeah, we're going to do that. Allow Azure services and resources to access server. Enable advanced data security. And then create Azure SQL database with AdventureWorks dataset. So maybe you've heard about AdventureWorks. This is just a sample database for all the DBA. So, okay. And so let's just go ahead and do that now. Why this slide? This slide has 109 pages there, or 93 pages actually, because I put all the pictures there in Azure portals, SQL servers. So I created the lab, and then just it was a lot of manual work. So just to select the correct options there, and what to do with that. So I'll just upload that slide there as well. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'll be checking all these options as well. I've done it once, and just to confirm that nothing new have changed from last year, but obviously my previous labs were totally different, so those are null and void now. So let's create, what we're going to do now, we're going to create our SQL instance, SQL server, and then we're going to create a SQL database as well, right? So okay, so let's go to Azure portal and go for, so there is, when you type in Azure search SQL, so you will get SQL Server. So we're gonna go to SQL Server and create SQL Server. So I'm just putting first few steps here just to discuss that. When we're creating SQL Server, so just the name and resource group obviously, and then we're gonna select in networking that firewall rules allow Azure services and resources to access this server. So don't block them by default. And also once SQL Server is created, so we're going to just simply make sure that advanced data security option is selected, and then we're going to go for SQL database later, and we're going to make sure that we select not a blank database, but we're going to select a sample database that is called AdventureWorks, and all DBAs normally know that this database name because it is a sample database having a huge amount of tables and huge amount of data there, so they could play with it and do some queries there, run some queries and learn on it, right? So AdventureWorks is freely available on internet as well from Microsoft. So this is where you can run queries and practice queries. Okay, so we're going to select that AdventureWorks, and once we select that, then we're going to talk about the security risk. So let's get to that stage where we have a SQL Server installed, and then we're going to install the database as well. Now, this means that we can go to okay, here. So I'm stuck with one more test here that will not soft, it gets into soft delete state to allow. So when you see this message, this dreaded message, this comes when you are testing backups, and if you've created a backup policy in Azure, suppose, and suppose you actually successfully created a backup policy, so you cannot delete it within 14 days, before 14 days. So one of the things in log analytics, it doesn't delete in less than 14 days, so that's a really frustrating thing. But let's just go ahead. I'll just go home button here, and we're in Azure now. So I'm just gonna go to search, and I'm gonna type SQL. You know, when I say SQL, one guy there who was a professional DBA, he actually said that, hey, what is SQL? It is SQL. I was like, huh? Why would somebody be offended by this? So try to say SQL wherever you try to say it, right? But you know, DBAs actually get offended, some of them, that you call it SQL. Anyway, so we're gonna go for SQL servers here, right? And then we're gonna try to create a SQL server. Although when you're creating a database directly, then also you can create a server during that wizard, but we are separately creating that server now. So there are two options there. So and please do watch video. Sorry, I was just saying it on the group. No server has. Okay, so let's click the add button here, and SQL Server. So obviously SQL Server, well, you guys are both VIPs, so you have free trial, and I'm just a poor guy who's stuck with this account for 4 years, and the tricks didn't work for me. I don't know why. So here, let's click that create new, and I already have RG01 September 2020. So RG01 Sept 2020. I'll just write that, but it will say that I already have it. So but I can't delete that. So I'll just go for RG1. So I could delete this one. Okay, so whatever you type here, it's just for today's. Oh, it's not September 1. It's 3 September. RG1. And press OK. So today's resource group, and then we go for, you can see that there is a internet address here as well, right? So we're going to just type here your first name, SQL instance, SQL server, we can say, and today's date 03Sept2020. Okay, so this is a SQL server we are creating, and inside this we're gonna attach a database. And you can attach as many databases there, but obviously you have to be an accountant as well. You need to know that what database you're attaching there, what services you're attaching to that, and at the end you will see a nice hefty price tag there per month that they will have, right? Okay, so let's yeah, so it's East US here,
In
and
that case, we are going with the third example, right?
so this is actually the first example. If
In
we
first example, also we create SQL and create database as well.
exactly separate. So if I just click this SQL here, so it shows you SQL Server separately and SQL databases separately.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And here, so this is the whole
That
internet.
new database will create on top of this SQL server.
Exactly, and that would be a separate wizard because we need to independently see more features. If we can go another way as well, where a bit less features will be showing there during the wizard. So this is a way where we can see majority of the features through two wizards. Okay, so here location East US, and there's that server admin login. Obviously you need to remember that, so your first name admin and the password small abc capital ABC shift 123 without shift 123. Yeah, I'm good. Small abc capital ABC shift 123 without shift 123, and so that's it. And well, that's just a username password. I know I'll not forget it, but anyway, I have that habit of writing it somewhere. So your first name admin and the password. Okay, so I'll just click next networking for the SQL server, and here allow Azure services. So it says enable this to allow applications from Azure to connect to this server. Examples of when you would want to enable this: using the query editor in the portal or connecting your Azure VM to your Azure SQL databases for your protection. When selecting this option, make sure you log in and user permissions limit access to only authorized users. We're gonna check that which users will be getting authorization. We're gonna connect this SQL server to our Azure Active Directory, and those Azure Active Directory users we're gonna use for authorization as well. So let's press yes here. So what we're doing now is that please allow whatever other service wants to connect to you, and that is, one is Azure Active Directory, and second is we're going to install SSMS, SQL Server Management Studio, SSMS. Maybe hey, you both know that already, I guess, because you both said that you have worked on SQL. So SSMS, SQL Server Management Studio, the client from which we can connect to SQL, right? So allow Azure services, make sure you press yes, and then click additional settings. So enable advanced security. Now this is a 30-day free trial, so this means that since we are going to delete it today, so it's okay to, and it's a free trial, so it's also good. So let's click that. Enable advanced security. Advanced data security will automatically create a new storage account. So it will create a new storage account. Remember that, which means that in a production environment, if you do that, it's going to charge you, right? So if you're enabling that, create a new storage account for saving vulnerability assessments. If a storage account was previously created for this purpose, it will be used instead. Azure storage prices will apply. Yeah, obviously storage prices will apply. So whatever you choose, just make sure that now we're using another third service called storage as well with this SQL now. So let's click tags. So yes, we will use it. Start free trial, tags, and yeah, whatever you want to put there, the name, branch, or something, and review plus create. A 30-day free trial, yes, but where's the price tag here? Okay, that will be with the database, not with the SQL server. So let's click create, because database grows, right? So the price tag will come with the database, and database will be connected to this SQL server. Okay, so well, yeah, it is still creating. Okay, well, okay. And that's taking forever. We can create a database right after. Okay, that's done. Right after it is done. That's what I was going to say. So I'll just click that code resource. Once we're in the resource, so I'm just going to go to the SQL again. Now I'm going to type in search SQL, and this time I'm going to go for databases. So I'll click the databases here and try our new Azure SQL resource browser. This experience offers a unified view for your SQL Server resources in Azure as well as improves. Okay, so let's go for add and SQL databases. So now you can see that, okay, first of all, resource group is the same. Now we're creating a database that will be inside that SQL Server. So you can go for your first name, DB01, or whatever name you want to give. And the SQL Server is already showing there. Otherwise, as I was saying, that if you had directly come here to create a database, then it was also offering that, hey, it's a must as well. So you could have clicked the create new and create that SQL Server here as well during the wizard of creating a database. So, but we did that separately, and it's showing now. So other than that, there's that Elastic Pool. Want to use SQL Server Elastic Pool. So what is the idea behind that? Elastic Pools provide a simple and cost-effective solution for managing the performance of multiple databases within a fixed budget. So that is cost effective as you fix a budget, and if the SQL Server is performing really high CPU, it's demanding really high CPU, so it goes to certain level of CPU and RAM, whatever it wants, but to certain level what is allowed by this Elastic Pool. So this means that if your budget is like, oh, I cannot spend more than $1,000 per month, it's maximum for me, so it will let you use that much CPU and RAM that will be under that budget. So if it requires more and your budget doesn't allow that, good luck. So the thing is that it goes with your budget. So that is one cost effective way to go for that you go for fixed budget, and that much underlying hardware it will let you use. An Elastic Pool,
It's
yeah.
very interesting option, sir, because how actually it will determine then how much budget I will use within 1 month, because I believe the traffic will also charge, right, sir? I mean, to
Yes,
access the database and pull the data from the database as well, right?
bandwidth, yeah.
So yeah, it's how actually it determine that how much data will be accessed during 1 month. I mean, it's based on the customer, right? How
Yeah.
frequently the customer will access, or not the customer, let's say the app will access the database. How actually it will determine and how actually it will do. It's a very interesting thing.
Yeah, so if it needs more, so obviously the degradation of performance will also tell the administrators right away that we have allocated very less budget, or the demand is too much and the budget is too less. So when the performance degradation occurs, or actually machine freezes up, that will be the dead end, and this means increase the budget. So yeah, and we can go for that Elastic Pool. Suppose we click yes just to explore what's inside. So press yes here just to check that and go for create new. Then it will show you that what are the packages inside. First of all, when you click the create new, it says that, okay, first give it a name and then I'll let you explore everything. So your first name, Elastic Pool, and press O and K. And in this Elastic Pool, well, there's that configure Elastic Pool now. So let's click that configure Elastic Pool, this one. And now it lets you then check. So general purpose, scalable compute and storage options, 500 up to 20,000 IOPS, 2 to 10 millisecond latency, so it's fast. And starting at $480 Canadian dollar per month. So then there is business critical 5,000 to 200,000 plus IOPS and 1 to 2 milliseconds. That's really fast, starting at 2,588 Canadian dollar per month. And then there is a basic one here on the left side. If you click that, looking for basic standard. So when I went for that, so there's a in the basic there's a standard for workloads with typical performance requirements starting at 143 Canadian dollars per month, and then there's basic starting at $96 Canadian per month for less demanding workloads, and then premium starting at 892 Canadian dollars. So this is for basic, and if I click the basic here, so then you can see that now you can just data maximum size, and there's that reserved EDT so if we go for suppose so how much data will be there, and how much do you allow the data to be, and after that it will not be allowed after that. So this means that you can really curb and put a cap on how much it doesn't go out of your budget. So pool settings or per database settings, and then you can go for that too. Now it says here EDTU, and I kind of where's the DT? So I'm just gonna put that here. SQL Azure EDTU. So here it says stands for Elastic Data Throughput Unit, EDTU. It is a unit used to measure several counters like CPU, memory, disk read, writes, and other similar counters related to performance. With EDTUs, you can measure the performance offered by the different options. So this means that it will try to check how much your CPU, memory, disk read, writes are there, and this will be converted into hey, this will cost this much, and what is your budget. So it will let that conversion go ahead, and until that budget is reached, and then it will stop. Okay, you can't have more than this CPU, memory, and disk reads, writes. So EDTU stands for Elastic Data Throughput Unit. Okay, so we go ahead and this would actually we're gonna delete that today. So it's up to you. You wanna use that? It's a good option. But we just explored what it is, and I'm just gonna cancel out of here. We just explored it, and I'm gonna click no here. So but Elastic Pool keeps you under the budget, so we understand that. Otherwise, it's just saying if you select no, then it will just give you okay. So generation 5, 2 virtual cores for the processing, and 32 GB storage you will be given for a typical database here. So let's click networking. And in networking, you got firewall rules, but obviously it is connected to a SQL server that already has allowed that. So this is grayed out here. And private endpoints, so it's not connecting to any other public IP or private IPs there inside the VNet, so nothing to configure on networking. And click additional settings. So here we need to just make sure that it's not a blank database, otherwise we will have to create tables and put some values inside ourselves. So we can go for sample database that has a lot of tables and huge amount of data that we can then check security on, right? So AdventureWorks LT will be created as the sample database, and there's that database collation, so we don't need to actually change the collation there or talk about it. Don't need to change anything because it's not gonna let us. And advanced data security, protect your data using advanced data security, a unified security package including data classification, vulnerability assessment, and advanced threat protection for your server. So this is already selected as well when we were creating SQL Server. It says here has already been enabled. Okay, so if you go to tags here, so nothing in tags, or you can put something, and that's it. So now that's the price tag here that I was talking about, 486. So you know that in George Brown College there are classes starting, and we cannot remotely connect to their machines. So I'm asked to do the whole SQL Server and Exchange Server course on Azure. So that's gonna be very interesting for me as well. But when I showed them the price, they must have fell from their chairs. Although it's a huge college, but they said no, we have a free package, and then they offered the free package. Anyway,
Mine was is showing much less because I selected the SQL Elastic Pool. It's showing estimate 287 CAD per month.
all right, that's great. It's because you chose Elastic Pool.
Yeah, and the
That's good.
standard option, because in the free trial you don't have premium and the business emergency option. I mean, it's only basic and the standard.
You know what? That's a very good point that you just made. So I'll just go previous and go
Yeah,
previous.
because for Elastic it's showing estimate per month $287. I mean 287 CAD. Yeah.
Why I was not using that? Because I just want to have all the. I'm just trying not to have any surprises, but I checked it already that without Elastic Pool, what services were there. So if there's any missing, then I would be able to tell that, hey, that was there before. So if it's not
Yeah.
there, and then we can do cross, you know, back engineering. So I'm just gonna press yes here. Thank you for sharing that, and we can and making me realize that it's better option to select, and it looks like better. But I'm just going for the raw option so we don't miss any feature. Obviously, hopefully it's not gonna hide any feature. So
No, it should not. It's just select the standard one. It should not change anything, I will.
You're right. So configure Elastic Pool. I'm just going to click that, and when it opens, so that was general purpose, but I'm going to go for looking for basic, standard, and premiums. I'm just going to click that, and then from there, if I can choose basic, so that's already 50 GB or 4 GB data, right? So it's 96 CAD because it's pay as you go. So I think I am able to select that because of this. And yes, it doesn't just affect any of my lab and features. So yeah, I'm
But
just
it will be very slow, so you can choose the standard one, I believe, and
you're right.
because we need to access and do the labs. Yeah.
So it is talking about storage, but it's not talking about CPU, right?
But but the EDTU will also affect based on the storage, right?
Yeah, you're right. So although I was going for even much more higher, so why not this one? You're right. So let's go for that, and standard, but it's just giving, overall it will be affected definitely. Changing basic options may reset selections you have made. Review all options prior to creating the resource. Yes. What else got reset? Nothing should be reset. Okay, so it's standard Elastic Pool options, and let's click networking. Nothing affected here. Additional tags. Well, when I create, then it will, the validation will tell me. So if I go to review plus create, and then, well, there was actually no validation done. So I'll click create. Okay, so it's getting created. I think I will have to send you guys the lab for, I think, classification that you mentioned. I will have to send because next Tuesday, Wednesday, we are having, I'm having George Brown classes there, Exchange and SQL. But yeah, majority of the features are, not a lot of features are there, but those which are critical, we're covering that. So it is.
Are you taking classes at Humber as well?
Yeah, Humber, it's just VMware. And
Okay. I think it's a IT infrastructure bridging program, right?
yes. Hey, how do you know that?
I did that last year.
Hmm. You did?
Yeah, I'm Humber graduate
Hey.
from, for that program, IT infrastructure bridging program. Yeah.
You were not in VMware class?
Yeah, that time Mr. Arshad sir was there. Mr. Arshad was our teacher
For
at Humber.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
For Humber, Arshad sir was there. Arshad Khan.
Yeah, he's my friend.
Oh, okay. He knows me very well, Arshad sir.
Okay.
His
Yeah.
full name.
This year they gave it to me. So
Okay. Yeah.
What's his full name? The other teacher?
Arshad Khan.
Arshad
Arshad
Khan.
Khan.
Okay.
Arshad sir knows me very well. I mean, we did VMware and Server 2016 as well. Both
Oh.
classes are taken by Arshad sir.
Oh yeah, I left those classes. I used to take Server 2016 as well, but
Okay. Yeah.
I had to leave for another college. Wow.
So
Okay.
those two courses was taken by Arshad sir last year.
Nice. That's good.
And also he also take AWS class as well. So we got 3 classes from him.
What? Hey, he
Yeah.
was earning so much. That's not fair. I'm gonna talk to my boss. Hey, give me 2 courses. Yeah, he's still teaching Server 2016, so
Okay.
yeah, so that's a lot of politics as well there. Okay. So there's a database is created, guys, and I'm gonna go to then resource here, or we can just go for SQL databases from here. If I click that from here, so SQL databases is up here, and okay, so liberal nomination guys are really after us now. Hey, vote, vote, vote. Okay, so here, well, database is created. We're gonna go inside the database that is just created, and here, what we're gonna see is that we have a lot of features, but we're gonna go inside and check this advanced data security inside the database. And once you click the advanced database security, so this is it shows you some of the options there: data discovery and classification, vulnerability assessment, and advanced threat protection here. So these are some of the features, but let's just go for first of all try to introduce some Active Directory users there with this, and let's talk about. So we have created our SQL server, and we attached a database to our SQL server. In fact, we haven't connected to it. So let's connect and then go with the rest of the slides. How do we connect to the SQL Server database? So we have to download this. Okay, let me just put that option here. Optional information. And yeah, we need to go ahead and go to download SMS, right? So this is SQL Server Management Studio, from which we can make a connection from our laptop to SQL Server in Azure, right? So I'm just gonna press enter here, and hopefully if you're following, so you would have that SQL Server Management Studio already. Otherwise, you need to just click the first option that is there. So I'll just click that download SQL Server Management Studio, and I'll Control C and copy that if that's it. Okay. Oh, there was. Oh, serious? I did not see the chat. Sorry. Ouch. Now I'm seeing the chat of WebEx. So I'll just put that here. Link to download SSMS. Okay, so here, so ATP is a good feature that now supports Mac. Oh, I'm just reading previous comments there. So same region. Oh, okay. So here, guys, once you're there, you can just go for the first one, and that is download SQL Server. This is 18.6. Now I already have it, so you can just click this, and it will just ask for that and download. So if and then it's a very straightforward download. From there, just click save in the downloads folder, and just when it's downloaded, next, finish. So you want me to download and next, or okay, since you insist, so I'll just download and show it how to install. Well, for the recording of the video.
Can we still access the database using the query browser from Azure?
Oh yeah, we can.
Okay.
So query browser. Well, actually, normally I just use this SSMS always, but that is something that I have to look for. I think it's in overview, right? Or it's in connectivity. Oops.
Query editor in the
Oh yeah, this one.
yeah.
Query editor. So, well, it's already installed for me, so I can just instead of next, I will click repair. I don't know why. But you're using query editor, then it's okay.
Yeah. Just for catching your video, that's why.
Oh, okay. Oh, and I started this. Ah, man. So next is finish does this, and then I'll just show how to connect from this, and then from there also we can just attach some Azure Active Directory users. In our Azure, I think we have online created users as well. So we need actually one end user that was created in the cloud in Azure Active Directory directly, and also an global admin user. So what we can do is in this tab, my SQL Server is open. In this tab, my database is open. So I'm just going to right click and duplicate the tab to go to Azure Active Directory and create an end user and make sure that I have a global admin as well. So our root account is still a global admin, but if we don't have an end user, so we can create one. So I'm just going to click there to portal menu here and go to Azure Active Directory. So from end user also we can just check that if a non-privileged user tries to access a database, so what happens and what it can do, where we can authorize. I'm going to click users here inside, and then I'll go for new user. So I'm just creating a new user directly in the cloud. So it would be your first name. I have all other users, so I'm just going to go for your first name 07. And suppose we have the free on Microsoft domain. And I'll just go for your first name 07 here. But once we go there, so let me create a password. It will still ask you to change the password. So I'm going for small basic capitalization shift 123 without shift 123, and I'll not give any roles to this user. It will still be an end user. And we're in.
We use paid tenant, right? The one we had.
Sorry.
Cloud. We can also use the Cloud Buzz tenant as well, right?
Yeah, we can use that as well. So I'm just assuming because we did not go through the whole process of that, adding this tenant, so that's why I'm switching.
No, I'm just asking like
Oh yeah,
we just selecting for on purpose. Like we can select both of them, right?
easily, yeah. And yeah, rules, nothing in the roles because it's an end user, and job title department, nothing here, and its location is Canada. So I'm just going to click. So this location here is just to appear in the auditing and in performance logs. So I'm going to click create here. Your first name 07 as the end user. So while this is created, now I'm just gonna check that. Oh, it is completed for me, the installation of SQL Server Management Studio. If I click close, and then I'll go to Windows 10 and search area and type SQL and go for SQL Server Management Studio here. And it's thinking. Oh, it's gonna appear now. Oh, well, what happened? Oh, there you go. So, well, it's there, and it's asking, hey, where to connect. So we can make that connection now. First of all, it's asking for server name. So server type is obviously database engine here. Or if you have analysis services separately installed, reporting services, integration services, Azure SSIS integration services for analytics. But we're going to connect to database engine. Server name, we need to grab that. And authentication. So it's not Azure Active Directory yet. I'm going to change that to SQL Server Authentication. And we know the username password there already when we created that. So it was your first name, admin, and the password. But this server name, we need to grab that server name. So I'm just going to go to Azure here. And there's a SQL Server window open there, and there's a database window open there, right? So if I go to SQL Server window and go ahead to Overview, so there you go. There's nothing here. So we're going to go for database window here. And there it is. So in the database window, you can see this, and I'm just going to copy this whole server name from here and go down to SSMS, copy that here. And yes, it is a SQL Server Authentication. It's an internal user of SQL Server. So your first name admin is already there. Small ABC, capital ABC, shift 1, 2, 3 without shift 1, 2, 3. And I'll try to connect from here now. So it is asking that, hey, you need to sign into Azure, so Azure can detect your public IP and add that public IP that you can only connect from this public IP. No one else can connect to this database from any other IP. Or if you add that public IP at that time, whichever other IP, they will only be able to connect to this database. I'm going to click sign in here, and it's going to ask me the code as well. So username I selected, and then it's saying that, oh, this is your IP, okay. Or you want to add a subnet range? No, it's just my public IP. It detected that automatically as well. And press OK. Then it's going to ask me still, oh, or not. So it just took my logged in credentials from the browser. And so I'm connected to the databases now, so I'll just expand the databases. There's system databases here that we're not supposed to mess with. And then there's the database that we created, which is your first name database, DB0. And if you go to that database, so there are tables here, right? So if you expand those tables, so you can see that we never created those tables. So this is from the database called AdventureWorks. That is a sample database created by Microsoft for the developers, for the DBAs, to practice their queries and test their queries. So if I go to any one table, suppose there's a customer table there. Remember that, maybe you won't remember now, but in SharePoint to SQL, we had to create this AdventureWorks there as well. And we were trying to attach or show that database in SharePoint lists.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So this is the same AdventureWorks that you can use anywhere to test queries. So I'm going to go for select top 1000 rows there. So yes, all the rows are, or the top 1000. So they have put some huge data there, make-believe data, but obviously that's the data or the database there that we can play with. Now we're connected from our SSMS. So, but we are connected from internal SQL Server user, right? So we need to connect actually from the Azure Active Directory administrator, the higher or highest privileged account, and then we're going to connect from an Azure Active Directory end user or least privileged or less privileged or non-administrator account as well to the database, right? So, and then, yeah, obviously, if it's less privileged or non-administrator, then we can put some restrictions and check some security policies there as well. That if you have just least amount of privileges, then what do you do? So we have already made a connection there. Now we can just check some more slides there that security risks are when an app is connecting to SQL's database from over the internet, then hackers can try to steal the session, copy data over the network. So there are, if this is the setup where you are connecting from on-premises to your SQL server, I'm connected from my laptop here to through SSMS to SQL Server. So I have to use obviously the internet connection, and from there I'm connected to Azure SQL. Suppose my application was, or my virtual machine was inside a VNet and my other database was inside VNet, so I will connect first to the application, and using the private IP I could have connected to the SQL as well. But right now I'm connecting over the internet to SQL Server. So obviously there's always that a possibility of hacker trying to check your data from your source. So this is your laptop. Suppose you were in the office and the hacker knows your office's public IP or set of public IPs there, and whatever traffic is getting out of that public IP of your branch, maybe hacker over the internet is trying to steal that information and grab that information from there. Even use some tools to hack your session, make a slight disconnectivity, and then you connect again automatically. But this time a hacker has impersonated that, hey, SQL Server, it's still your branch, but actually it's a hacker. And while on your side you're still checking, hey, what happened, why I'm not connected. So well, there could be possibilities of this kind of attacks as well. And if we go further here, so if firewalls and other security measures are not implemented, no defense in depth, credential loss and data loss are there. So obviously you should have firewalls implemented there. That's it goes without saying, first of all, obviously. And then if you go further, allow traffic from only specific subnet. So this is what right now what happened in front of you, what you saw here, that it allowed, with that it asked for a IP, public IP, or a subnet or a range of IPs. So and then so this is basically, I didn't configure it. It asked my public IP that, okay, I'm allowing only you from this public IP to connect to this database. So this is already automatically configured and done and required, right? So we can also allow an IP only of DB admin to connect. Hence, hackers cannot try to hijack the session, as traffic is only allowed from specific IP addresses. So the example I was giving, that whatever traffic is going out from your, when the hacker tries to disconnect your session and connect himself or herself. So the thing is that how can he? Because his public IP is not allowed by SQL Server. So if that is configured that only from this public IP, then hacker cannot even take over the session.
Sir, are hacker able to copy your public IP? I mean, can he use the same public IP to connect the SQL server you are connecting?
So if the hacker can put your public IP in his machine, or now that is not possible actually. You can't use two public IPs from two different endpoints. So he has to have that public IP attached to his router or to his virtual machine. But over the internet, you can't have two public IPs assigned to two different devices. So it will be an IP conflict, or it has to be behind. So public IP and behind, then it is because of NAT. It is connecting some private IP. So that IP mapping. So it's I have to check that, but no, it's not really. It should not be that possible. No way. Because public IP, if I can take your public IP easily, then over the internet there should be a public IP conflict there as well. Okay, guys, here. So the device that is connecting and using that IP has a MAC address as well, and through that also it can be identified that, hey, two MAC addresses using same IP. So okay, without NAT. Now we are, this would be talked about already actually. So let's go for, yes, we did that. Install SQL Server Management, done. SQL connect to with administrator account, done. Go to SQL Server firewalls and virtual networks and disable allow Azure. So what we're trying to do now, first of all, we're gonna connect. We're gonna do first lab, and we're gonna check that if this allow Azure services and resources to access this server, which was a firewall feature, if we disable that, can we still connect to our SQL Server or not, right? And then allow virtual machine, subnet, and firewall. Actually, this all has been configured already. It is just saying that if you allow Azure services and resources to access this server, this is we enabled it. Maybe you remember that we enabled this option during the creation of the SQL Server. So but we only added our public IP, and that was done when I was connected with SSMS. So it asked that. So make sure that if you disable the firewall, disable the allowing. This means that you disable the firewall itself, that hey, don't allow any traffic other than your public IP, right? So we can do, actually it's already done, but what we didn't do is we did not disable manually this option, allow Azure services and resources to access the server, but we have allowed just our IP to connect to our SQL server. It was not us, it was the automatic function of SSMS as well. So what we need to do is that I'm just gonna go for certain slides here and check it out. Well, this lab was that if you, how can you add a public IP, your specific public IP? So that how was answered automatically when it connected, and it just added our public IP. So it was supposed to be a lab, but it was already done. So we don't have to do that manually. And if we go for the next point here, Azure SQL Access Control. So now we're going to connect it to Azure Active Directory to make it more secure now. And we can actually do some authorizations that this user cannot use this service and this user can use that within the SQL server. So Azure SQL Access Control, there's authentication and authorization that we can play with or configure. So authentication includes SQL authentication and Azure AD authentication. So we already used SQL authentication till now, right? There was a inside user of SQL server that we connected from our SSMS. But how about the users of Azure Active Directory? Can they connect as well? Now we're going to connect them as well. Authorization, database roles. You can give one Active Directory, Azure Active Directory user, the database role of like the highest privileges, and then you can also give one user no privileges or very less privileges, just the reader role. So can we do that, and how can we do that? Are there some queries that we can run? So we're going to do all that now. So let's connect our Azure Active Directory users there. So there are some steps there as well. In fact, first of all,
I have a question.
yeah.
For the lab purpose, if you want to watch the videos later, so how we are gonna include the IP address? Is it included in the slides or no?
IP address will be your public IP, whatever your public IP at that time.
As you mentioned, there was a lab, but it picked up automatically, right? Your public IP.
Yeah.
But if we want to add those slides are in PowerPoint or not?
How to do what is mentioned here? This one?
Yes, yes.
Well, this lab steps I put there, and when we go to the network side, you can add any public IP there if you want to do that manually.
Okay.
But since this is, even if you want to avoid that, you won't be able to. When you log in, Azure
Gonna
has
pick
that
up
built-in
automatic.
feature that it will make you, it will detect your public IP and it won't go ahead if you don't give your public IP. So
Okay.
pretty much.
You can add it from SQL servers. You remember we create SQL servers from there. There is an option firewalls and virtual networks.
This one.
Yeah. From here you can add client IP, right? So that's
Any
the IP you can
this is already there.
add.
This one, my IP is
Yeah.
there, but it was
Yeah.
so automated that this lab. Yeah, but if you want to add some
Got it.
more IPs, yes, you're right. Then we
So
can
you
do
can
that as
add
well.
another IP, client IP, and so on. Yeah. This one.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay,
Oh.
and thank you for taking us very quickly there, Nazmul. So let's go ahead and here, yeah. So we were talking about this SQL. Yeah. You know what? Since I'm gonna put that slide there, and I was there already, and add client IP. Where is it? Was this option, right? So I'll just put a screenshot instead of remembering that again. So the screenshot didn't even come. Serious? Okay, I'll do that again. Okay, so I was gonna edit that screenshot, but seriously, it didn't. It normally appears here at this area, so I'll just put it in the slide so we would know those steps easily. Oh man, I wanted to put those arrows there. Anyway, so this is the way you can do that with the lab. Did I put that with the lab? Okay. So now let's go ahead with this. Yeah. So there are some comparisons here as well, and those comparisons are that if you strongly suggested to use Azure AD authentication and not SQL authentication. So right now we're using SQL authentication here, although it's not that insecure as they're saying, but obviously when you have Azure Active Directory or even your on-premises Active Directory and on-premises SQL Server, so better connect with that. Active Directory is there for authentication and authorization with a very good security mechanism there. So definitely it's strongly recommended. So, and we're going to do that now. So Azure AD identity protection and Azure AD password protection. This is obviously provided by Azure AD authentication, and you have Kerberos in the background, which is a very powerful ticketing-based authentication system. Conditional access and MFA. We talked about conditional access, where you can make the life of a employee miserable by putting so many conditions there that you can connect only from this app, from this browser only, from this type of cell phones or tablets or laptops, with this only operating system, if you're updated, and from this IP only. So many conditions that the employee would jump from 12th floor. So the thing is, you can have that, and this is available with Azure Active Directory, right? And then and MFA as well. Then Azure AD auditing and logging is so good that SQL, yes, does not offer there. In fact, conditional access also SQL does not offer with that depth. And single user identity source, so where's the user really coming from, and is it the correct ID it's using, and map roles to AD groups, then you can add it to. Obviously, all that SQL authentication can never offer, so that's pretty obvious. So all those are there, and that's why we're going to attach some end users there and the administrator there as well from Azure Active Directory. So here, apply security principles. So if we go for that, apply security principle of least privilege. So that's what we should do always, and that's the rule in our on-premises Active Directory as well. Assign fixed database roles to administrator user groups. So suppose one user is supposed to just go for one database. Suppose you have 20 databases there, and one user is supposed to he or she is just responsible for insurance company application, and that is only one database in the that instance. So that user should be only given access to that database. And what type of access? Modification access, delete privilege as well, or just change but not delete, and create, not create. So it's up to you. So create user-defined database roles if needed. With user-defined means again what permissions they can and cannot do. Use application role or execute as statement for app context. So they're just saying that execute as what? So this means you're logged in from less privileged user, and you then use the higher privileged user account information just to execute some query there that requires higher privilege than what you're logged in from, right? So execute as just means that you use some other account with which you're not actually logged in from, and that's very good. So you're logged in from less privileged account. If that less privileged account is hacked, not a lot of thing hackers can do, not a lot of damage hackers can do, because you gave yourself very less privileges, and you know the username password of the other account that has higher privileges, but you're not logged in from that. So that's a very good strategy. But this is pretty much what you do in every Active Directory environment, on premises or cloud. And there, the user, there's an app, there's a database table with row level security. So every row is actually being secured. Maybe you encrypted it, then you have actually given database masking you have used, which is another lab upcoming. So use group membership or execution context to restrict access to rows in a database table. So which row a user can access and see the data inside from your logged in credentials, and which row you cannot actually see there. So the security goes down to even columns and rows level, right? So
That's really great. I mean,
yeah, amazing. So database masking is one of the features that we're going to do a lab on as well. We can mask the whole column, and another end user, when logs in, cannot even see the data inside a column, which is same for the row as well. So if you go ahead and let's connect
I
our
mean, sir, is it for application side, or is it for the uh, database side? I mean, if we are masking any row, so that application will not be able to retrieve those data from the table, or is it the user who actually log into the SQL server and he cannot see the data only?
So it's a distribution of authorization. So administrators of the database will automatically be able to, suppose you implement the database masking, administrators will still be able to see that column. And when less privileged non-administrators connect to that database user, so they will not be able to see that. So that same goes for the application as well. Did you give application, especially that service account that is connected to application? Because through that service account, that application will connect to Azure. Did you give administrator privilege to that service account which the application is using, or did you give non-administrator role to the service account? If non-administrator,
Yeah,
then yes,
that's
application
right. That's
cannot
right.
see as well.
Yeah, got it.
So here, use group membership or execution context to restrict access to rows in a database table. So this is also really cool, and we're going to see that with the lab as well, how to. And it's like a few clicks. It's not a complicated way to do that. Just few clicks, and you will see that it works. But how we tested, that's something else. So okay, guys, here it's very simple how we can attach an administrator of Azure Active Directory or any user who has admin rights, and then any user we attach as we give access to on database level. So first of all, on the SQL server itself, you need to give an Azure Active Directory user account admin permission, administrator permission on a SQL server, right? So let's do that first. Once we are, so this is pretty much click, 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 and whichever user you select, that user becomes an administrator. So let's do that first, and then we're going to, and then we can log in from that user from SSMS as well. First, you have to obviously save it, and then copy this, and then log in from SSMS. So from your home SQL, from your home SSMS, from your laptop, you can connect from Azure user now. So let's do that and test it, and then we're going to check some security as well. So first of all, I'm just going to go to my SQL server here. So this is the database, the tab where the database is open. This is where the Active Directory is open. This is where the server is open. So I'm going to go to the server, and in the server, when you go further from overview, when you go down, then you see this, which is Active Directory admin. And there you go. So you can see a lot of options there in Active Directory. And seriously, what's going on? SQL servers. Hey, didn't I not create a SQL server here? Oh, now. Man, that refresh. Seriously. Yesterday also, just because of one refresh, so much frustration was there. So I'm going to go to that, and from overview, you can go down to Active Directory admin, and then set admin. So this is pretty simple and straightforward, but this user will have full administrative privileges on this SQL server and whatever number of databases you add there. So I'm just gonna go for, well, there's that admin, and this is my this subscription account as well. I'm just gonna select that and select. So that's admin account, and obviously we need to save it. So Azure Active Directory Authentication allows you to centrally manage identity and access to your SQL database version 12. So I'm just going to click save. So once it is saved, I'm just going to try to copy this because I need to connect from this Azure AD account to my SQL Server database. So can I do that or not? So normally what happens is that if you want to connect, you have to add that to the database as well when you're connecting. Normally this is for the other accounts that you will be connecting to, like the non-privileged accounts. You have to add them to the database level as well. But right now, since we added with this functionality, you don't need to add them specifically to the database. In fact, where did that admin account actually got added? Suppose we want to see that in the databases there. So if I select and refresh here, so I refresh this SSMS connection, and there's a database here, there's a security here, there's integration services here. If I go to security, maybe they have updated that here yet or not. If I go to databases here, and in the system databases and in the master database, there's a security column here, a security folder, and then there's a users folder here as well. So yes, it has been added. We added there in the console of SQL Server, and then it has been added in the master database. Now this is where all the configurations are made for the SQL databases, and in the master database you can see the security and the users. This user has been added already. We didn't come here and add it manually. So if it is added, now I need to disconnect, which is here. I need to disconnect from this with the SQL Server, local SQL Server user. I'm going to connect it from to the database from Azure user now. So I'm just going to disconnect here, and I'm going to connect from. So I'm disconnected now, nothing showing here. Then I'm going to click that connect again, and so obviously this is the same SQL Server to which we were connected, but now I do not need to connect from SQL Server Authentication or internal SQL Server user. I'm going to connect by Azure Active Directory Universal with MFA. If you have MFA configured, that will work. If not, it will still work. Active Directory password, Active Directory integrated. So we're going to go for Universal with MFA.
So the admin account for the SQL Server is going to be the same, Amir admin, right?
Yes. Whenever we want to connect from that, it will remain the same always. And we just need to change to SQL Server Authentication for that.
Okay, for now we are gonna use for the Azure Active Directory, and it's gonna be for both SQL Server and the database.
Yes, exactly. It has authentication on both now, the SQL Server and the database. So I'm just gonna click that Azure Active Directory Universal with MFA. So then it's asking, hey, where's the user? So I have copied it, I guess. Yeah. So right click, copy, make sure that you saved it, and then you paste it here. So once you paste it with Azure Active Directory Universal with MFA, then you can go ahead and click try to connect with that. Obviously it's gonna ask you the username. Username was small musical reason? No, XYZ? Yeah, XYZ. Okay, so I'm connected with that admin account now, and if you hover your mouse over there, you can see that it's at the end of this, it is written admin add, your user. So we have connected to that, and I'm just going to go to the database here as well, and then go to the your first name database, and then go to the tables. First, if I expand the database itself, which we created, right? So if I go to the security of that, the security folder here, and then the users. So is that user here created? No. So this means that are we able to create, because it's the SQL Server database admin, does it need to be separately added there or to the database as well? So if I go to the tables and then go for customer table, if it's an administrator, obviously it should be able to even expand and even watch the whole table there. Yes, the table opens fine, and that means that yes, that is the ultimate administrator which we added there with this. So that's one thing. Okay. Okay, so yeah, let's go for the next one. So first of all, we connected from Azure Active Directory. So what can we do now with that? So connected successfully, yes. And then let's add an Azure user with reader permissions only. Now we need to go through that step as well, and we're going to check that can we give some permissions there as well there or not. So create a user in Azure called your first name SQL01 or whatever name you want to give. So in that case, there's a query that we need to run first in. So let me just show that bigger. So we need to let that user be added to the master database, which is under system databases here, because we don't want that user to be added as a administrator, so we cannot go to the console for that. So we have to go to the database level here, and we need to add that user with a specific query. So that user is create user, and we're not creating it, it's an already created user in Azure Active Directory that we are just simply adding here. And it says that from external provider, or this is the whole query is here as well. This is the username, your first name SQL, and then from external provider. External provider is what? Your Azure Active Directory external provider, right? So it will search for that external provider, and automatically it's going to go for first. Okay, you're not asking for any internal SQL user, but you're asking from an external provider. Let me just search the Active Directory, and it's going to search from there, and if the user exists there with this username or UPN, then obviously it will find it. So first we add it to the master database. This means that it will get access to any new database that is created there, but we still have to add that user manually and give some permissions on the existing second database there as well, right? So this is what we need to do. First of all, we're going to create add that user to the master database level, and then we're going to add it to the actual existing database as well, separately, manually. Then I'm going to check that does it have reader permission now or not. So this is the first thing. We're going to go to we're going to use this query now. So I'm just going to put this query there, and I'm just going to paste that in this. You can just change the name to in WebEx and in Office 365. So that's the query that I'm just going to use now. I'm going to go to my SSMS here, and I want this user with less privileges to be added first on the master database, so it could be then further added to any other database as well. So in order to add it to the master database, I'm just going to expand that. We're here, right? So expand the databases. Then there is system databases, right? I'm going to expand that as well, and then select the master and right click. So I'm going to just run that query that I pasted there. If that user exists in the Azure Active Directory, it will be added. So I'm just going to run the query. So it just opens query editor here, and from there we can just I'm just going to paste that. I know that I have created a user at the start of this class. I've created a user 07, actually, your first name 07, right? And I know that the rest of the domain is the same, and it's an external provider, which is Azure Active Directory, right? This one. So this is the query that I'm just using there. So I'm telling SQL, hey SQL, there's an Azure Active Directory user that I want you to add to your security and inside the users area. So I'm just going to execute this. There's an F5 you can push, or you can click that execute, and it's executed. So the user is created there. It has to be already there in Active Directory first, obviously. Now, is it created? So I'm just going to go to the master database. I didn't refresh, but if I go to security and users, yes, it is added. Your first name 07. So it is added there. Now we need to add that also in this existing database. Any new database, it will be added, but existing database, you have to add it as well. So I'm just gonna add it, not edit. So how do we add to the existing database? I'm gonna go to the existing database and right click here, and there's a new query here as well. But not only that, I'm gonna add this user here, I'm gonna also give less privileges or reader privileges to that user. So that's another query that we need to run that hey, database number 2 or our custom database, I'm just going to add a user here that will have just a read DB reader rights. So that's a DB reader, database reader rights, right? So right click that user, the database, and then go to query here. And what we can do is, this is the rest of the query. The first thing is, yes, you tell that database, I'm creating a user in this existing database, although you did create that in master database, but you have to do that for any existing database manually as well. But the second query tells that alter role, give that user DB data reader. That's it, just a reader rights, and add member to and which user you are giving reader rights. So whatever you created up there in the database, give that reader the rights or these rights there. So I'm just gonna copy these two queries there. First one will create that user inside that database, which is pretty much adding that user. Second one will give limited rights. There are many other rights that you can give there as well, which is a long list. So I'm just going to copy these two queries to the WhatsApp as well as. So I'll just right click and copy that and go to my SSMS. There I need to open a query editor for this. I think I did, right? I'm just gonna right click here, and if I did not, so I'll just, all the other query editors are still open. So I opened a query on the level of this database. It shows here as well that you're on this database, and whatever query you are about to run will implement on this database. So I'm pasting these two, but I need to make a change here. First of all, it's not SQL. Second thing, it's not 01. And
Sir, I have one question. I mean, first we created the user in the master database, right? I mean the master database, but now we are creating the user and altering the role that is for the second database, which is we created from Azure, right?
we should from Azure, yes.
But can't we just do the second step? Why we need to add the data user in the master database first? Why we need to do that?
Master database is just that this user is then identified for future databases as well. Otherwise, yes, we can go directly to the custom database as well.
But if we create the user in the master database, is it automatically replicate to all the secondary and all the other database, or we need to create the same user in the secondary database as well?
Secondary database has to be created, and it checks that, hey, does the master database have it or not?
So okay. When we are creating the user in the secondary database, it's also check in the master database that the user exists or not, right?
So it has to be there, and then it can be added somewhere else. And for future databases, it will be there.
Okay.
Because it takes a copy of the master database when you create a future database and new database.
Okay.
Okay, guys. So here, if you're creating, which just pretty much means adding this user or introducing this user to the new database that we created ourselves. So I'm just first running this query. Suppose you don't select it and you press execute, so it's gonna run both queries. Well, it's gonna run first that and then this, but I'm just first selecting this. Whatever you select and you execute, so it will just simply run the execution. So it has done that. Then so this means it has added that user there. Then I'm just telling that, hey, do this as well. That give it just the reader role. The user that you added, gave it just a reader role. So this database has its own security folder and users folder where I don't see this user added. So I'm just going to refresh that. And I'm going to go to security and users. So now it is.
But when we are altering the role, only the reader role, that will only applicable for the database we created from Azure, right, sir? But when we create the user in the master database, that user has all the rights, right? That user not only have the reader but also had a write access as well, right?
That user has to be given rights there. So if I just go there, suppose to that user in the master database. So if we select that user and right click here, so
because we did not change any role for that user in, I mean, for that database. We changed the role for the for our database, not the master database,
actually,
right?
just adding there does not give it any roles actually, right?
Oh,
Just
okay.
adding there does not give it any. So we have to define that. Now we added this admin, right? But it was through that
Yeah.
set admin where all the roles are already supposed to be defined there. So that's
Yeah.
but adding you have to manually give all the roles. None of the roles is given by simply adding it here. But when
Okay.
admin is added, we added it a different way. If we had added admin this way, this will not be admin. This would be just an end user for SQL Server.
Okay.
Okay, guys. So here, you know what? I was just checking that user because we can just go for master as well, and we can run some queries here, and we can run some queries here as well, or we can go to the actual server here and checked. Oh, are we not connected? Oh, this is Azure Active Directory, that's why. So we can check the rights of the users there as well. If you go to the roles here, in database roles, there are database roles here. So this is DB access admin. This is the role there, backup operator, data reader, right? This is another role. These roles are for the database and DB owner. See this? DB owner is there. So if we go right click here and check that new database role, we can just add anyone here as well. Normally it's just gonna give you the script there, which is going to just change anyone. So from these roles, you can just try to add anyone directly if you want to give a role here, and you can also so this is one of the areas where for the database area. So if we go down to this roles, this database, so does it have the roles for this? Yes, it has also roles here. So database roles here for this particular database, and from there you can run queries to know that who is added where and what is it doing. From these areas you can see as well. Okay, guys.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
okay. And so here, if we are what we were doing, so I'm just gonna go back here to the slide, and yes, we were supposed to give end user just the DB reader access. Now we need to check that as well, that did that query work. So well, it did work because it did give us that query result there. Here, commands completed successfully, right? So it did work. 743. Okay. 7. Oops, guys. Let's take a break. Can we connect at 744, 754, 804? Right?
Yeah, we can connect at 8 sharp, I think.
Yeah, sure. Let's connect at 8.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's quickly take a break. Resume. Oh. So let us resume. Okay, what we were doing was that we have here okay, so we give this end user, we added that to the custom database here, and we gave the reading or reader role there for this user. So can we connect to that? So it is created there, and we confirm that as well, that the user has been created there. If I go to SSMS here, and in this the roles, not the roles, the users in security as this user, has been added as a database reader, or as this says here, DB data reader role. So if we go back here to the steps, now what we can do is we can just add this, we can connect from this user, right? And this user is also Azure Active Directory user. So then it's going to ask the username password because we just created it. So the first time when you log in, even if you've given your own password there, it asks you to change the password. So we create that user in Active Directory. Once we connect to that from that user, then we can try to actually create a new table, because it's a reader rights and not creator rights, so it should not be able to create a new table or modify anything. So we're gonna confirm and check this all. So I'm just gonna go back here after giving this user, adding this user to the custom database. Now I need to connect from this end user. So what do? I will simply click the connect button here without disconnecting any of this. I'm just going to simply connect, do that connector button here, and instead of this username, I'll just change it to your first name 07 in my case. So that's the user, and it's still Azure Active Directory user. I'm going to click connect. So I think it's small. Let me see. shape123.shape123, and then it asks that, hey, change it. What did I write? Small. Let me see. Go to shape123.shape123. XYZ, XYZ, shape123.shape123. XYZ, caps XYZ, shape123.shape123. Okay, so there's that sign in here. So we are connected as that user here. So I'm just gonna close all the above, or collapse all the above folders, and if I go, so this is, if I hover my mouse over here on this, on top of this, so there's that, you can see in the pop-up that you're connected from this user. So I'll go from this user who has the DB reader rights, and I'll go to this database and expand. So if this user can view, so if I go to the tables and simply right click and open the table, so view and read, that's reader rights. But if this user can create a table, so it can read, yes. If I right click here on the tables folder and click new and table, so then so you are not logged on as a database owner or system administrator. You might not be able to save changes to tables that you do not own. Certain edits require create table permission. So you don't have the create table permission because it's a so certain of the attributes will not be there, and you won't be able to save the table there, although it has gone to the table. So if I just put there, suppose it's name, tab, and then the phone, tab, and then city, tab, so etc. And if I right click and save, will it let me save? So I right clicked here and click the save button and test. So it just says that it will be limited access, but it says warnings were encountered during that pre-save validation process and might result in a failure during save. Do you want to continue attempting? Not the table owner, no create table permissions. Now it's assertive here, so it's pretty straightforward here that we don't have permissions there. Okay, that's very good.
Yeah, I just run that query and it gives me the option to see which role or which permission has been given to the user and all those stuff.
So I am logged in from admin here, and I'll go to databases, and I'll go for new query. And so thank you for sharing that. And so if I put that query and change the user to my user, so this is the whole
Yeah,
query. And
you can omit where clause, then it will give you all the users information.
oh, or otherwise you can go for
Yeah, otherwise you can select the user and it will give you the specific user information.
to user. So okay, if we go for we can put a
just dash dash
oh dash dash
dash
sorry.
dash.
And so that's it, right? So execute. So this user is external user first of all, and authentication type external, state grant connect, permission name connect. That's it. So do we have anything else about that user? But it's about all the roles and permissions as well. And for this, it is just giving this. So it's a grant. Yeah, you can connect and connect as well, but it does not have the roles here showing anywhere. So this means that we can just add some more here.
Yeah, I think we need to add the role option and role table.
But that's very good. Thank you for this sharing. And it has then the authentication type is what, and yeah, so and it has a connect permission as well or not.
Yeah.
So
You can run it in the master database as well. If you select master database, then I think you get some other options as well.
So this user, yeah, but it gives more details about the administrator as well.
Yeah, it said alter any user. I mean, admin can alter any user permission name.
Okay, that's great. And just connect is, yeah, this is a permission name. So, and the connect permissions, we can have another query that gives that what does connect permission
Maybe the role, yeah, maybe the role as well. Yeah.
All right, thank you for that. And
No problem.
cool. Okay, guys. So here, yeah, we can see that the user has been granted the DB roles. Normally, I'm so used to connecting to my local SQL server, and there I just right click. I just keep on right clicking everything, and it gives right away. But here it's queries, and I didn't collect any specific queries there. So that would be something that I have to search as well. But if you connect from this user, yes, we can see that it's just DB reader role. Okay, so if we go ahead and try to go for the next. So it's a Azure SQL data protection. So we can do encrypt data at rest, and then there is encrypt data in transit. So TLS and IPsec, and then there's dynamic data masking. So these are some of the things that we need to check. And so yeah, obviously in SQL, just like any other data on storage on your hard disk as well, you should be encrypting that data. If you want to use the with the Windows, you can encrypt the whole disk. What was that feature that encrypts the whole disk? What is the name of that feature in Windows?
BitLocker.
BitLocker, exactly. So BitLocker is just to encrypt the whole disk. Otherwise, EFS or encryption file system is for that. So BitLocker and then the other one. So let us just try to.
So encrypt data at rest means in the source or destination, sir?
Sorry?
I mean, encrypt data at rest means is it encrypting source or the destination side?
So normally it's the destination, which is the database. So I'm connected to my destination here. So that would be at rest, and it's encrypting. So where the data is.
Okay.
And if we go ahead and try to check it out, so encrypt Azure SQL data at rest. So transparent data encryption and enabled by default using key protected by server certificate. Obviously, you need to buy a certificate. So either you will use a self-signed built-in certificate, or you will go for purchasing a certificate from the CAs or certificate authorities like GoDaddy.com or digicert.com, and it would be $200 up to $2,000, whatever level of security you want there. You can get there. So once you have that certificate, you can just encrypt the data and save the key there in Azure Key Vault. If you want to go for your own customer managed keys, you will just pay separately for the Key Vault as well. And also default using key protected by server certificate. So when you're creating a server and you purchase a certificate, you can attach that certificate, and it will, through that certificate, reliable certificate that is, it will encrypt the data. And then there's always encryption in use, data encrypted within SQL, client accesses key to decrypt. So this means that SQL data is always encrypted, and if you enable that, I think it is enabled, and client accesses key to decrypt. So whenever the client accesses the data, so I'm just accessing that data while it is encrypted. So I'm right clicking and trying to check whatever the tables are there. So this will decrypt. So if I'm just going for that same query that I was just doing just now, select top 1000 rows. So the encrypted data has to be first decrypted, and that would require use your CPU and RAM a little more, and storage IOPS as well. So when you have everything encrypted and it's a huge amount of data, so do expect a bit more pressure on CPU, RAM, and storage. So the eDTU that we were seeing there, elastic pool, so all three will be pressured more a bit when they have to decrypt the data for you to see the data, and then when you close it, it has to be encrypted again. So that's extra pressure. And then key in Windows Certificate Store or Azure Key Vault. So again, where do you want to save the key? You want to get a separate service for that, or certificate store within the Windows server operating system where all the other certificates are stored. If we go to, okay, that's hey, it's two times the same thing. Oh, copy paste. And user connects via browser. So what happens here is the user connects via browser to an app. The connection is encrypted with TLS, right? So this is that over the this is data in transit that we're talking about, right? In transit means traveling over the network. App connects to SQL in the backend, and that connection is also encrypted, right? So trust server certificate equal false. Now this is a statement that says that do not trust server certificate, or if it says trust server certificate equals false, this means that do not trust server certificate, which means that it will force the confirmation of server certificate as you are not automatically trusting the server certificate. So when you reach the SQL server, it's going to check that, hey, is that certificate that is there, is it a legit certificate, and it is connecting from normally a certificate has a certification source as well, right? So suppose if I go to any site here and there's a in the browser, I go for the log sign here and I go for certificate here, and then certificate path here. So Portal.Azure is Microsoft IT TLS. It is the connection is encrypted, but it has purchased that from DigiCert, Baltimore route. So this means that DigiCert is actually an Australian company, and they are a bit expensive and very reputable over the internet. So you can see that the Azure is actually buying security certificates from DigiCert. So that it just confirms that, okay, the server has a certificate, but is there a certificate chain for that? If it sees the chain and it goes back to this chain of until DigiCert, so it means that it is legit certificate coming from a legit source. Plus you can see from there down here in the details, and you can go for thumbprint, which is a unique print or alphanumeric address for that certificate given. So if that certificate is being used, so it confirms that SQL Server has a certificate chain intact, or hacker just got into it and says that, hey, there's a certificate and this is a legit resource you're coming to, while you're actually connecting to a hacker server. If you say that, hey, whatever certificate is there is true, or trust certificate is true, this means trust the certificate, whatever is there. So when it goes down to that, then it does not cross-checks that certificate and certificate chain for that. So TLS encryption to Azure SQL enabled by default. So this means the connection. So I'm connected to SQL Server for my laptop right now. So through it has that transmission layer security, and over the network my connection is encrypted right now. So best practice in application connection string specify encrypt equal true and trust server certificate equals false. So this means that application connection should be encrypted, and then do not trust that SQL Server certificate. This means cross-check that SQL certificate whenever you're making a connection there, right? So if we go ahead, there's that SQL dynamic data masking, and that is limits non-privileged users from connecting to SQL data by masking the data. So what happens here is that automatically discovers potentially sensitive data in Azure SQL, recommends masking actions, so it can do recommendations as well, obfuscates data returned by query. So somebody runs a query, hey, what is information about user Bob, and about his salary or whatever, whichever table it connects to and you're querying. So it obfuscates just means that you can just read the data, or it is just XXXX data there instead of an actual data there that the query returns. So data within database unchanged. While the data is not changed at all, the query returns the result where suppose you were asking about user Bob, and his querying his information, but the information comes as just XXXX. So you can just mask that data or specific data as well, or specific column there that any information in this column for non-privileged user will not appear. So non-privileged users or non-administrator user won't be able to see that. So that's really cool as well. So there's a lab for that as well. So configure data masking of email address in AdventureWorks. So if I go to AdventureWorks here where I'm connected right now, and I have a customer table here, and I'm just gonna right click here and go for select top 1000 rows. So I can actually see all the email addresses in this column, right? So these are all the email addresses here. And as an administrator, if I connect, right now actually I am connected from, if I hover the mouse here, you can see that there's your first name 07 or Amir 07 is written there, which is actually a non-administrator user. So non-administrator user is having a DB reader rights, but that means that the user can only read. Now what we want is the user should not be able to see or clearly read the emails as well, right? Although this user has reader rights, I don't care. I'm not gonna let that user have email or any other column you want to mark. So let's check that if we can mask email column here, right? So that's the task here. For that, obviously, I'll just disconnect this user first of all. Okay. So another says this is specifically to find DB role only. Oh, okay. So that's very good. You've been doing search here. Thank you, Nazmul, for sharing that too. So
Problem.
I'll copy that, and that is the script. Go to the master, new query, paste, execute. So DB owner here.
But master only we have DBO, but if you go to our Azure TV, then you can see your user.
There you go. Wow, man, you really narrowed it down. So thank you for sharing that. I've been in contracts. I just keep on searching, and then so we should be very good in searches. So definitely you are. So that's very good. Thank you for getting this query. And this is specifically DBO role. So that's perfect. So I'll just add it to, so you can also see that. So in order to know the DB role, but we should be able to modify that as well. Suppose we want to know some other role. So we should know first what are the roles, and then we can just change that role, and it should get that information about the role, who gets that role or who is attached to that role. So DB role in our custom the database. So I'll put it in WhatsApp, and okay, so that's very good. And let us go ahead with so masking, right? So what we are going to do is that configure data masking of email address in AdventureWorks. Suppose you want to go for that, you can mask any other column as well. I'm going to show you because it's not that big deal. It's we should know just where to go, right? So log into Windows VM, open SQL. Well, we are logged in from our SSMS from our laptop to the database here. So connect to AdventureWorks database. We are already connected to AdventureWorks database. View sales lt.customer database table. See email addresses. Yes, we can see that from that user. Well, I disconnected from that user, so I'm just gonna open that here. Sales customer lt. And when you download this database, obviously it's the same thing there available, same information. So yes, we can see the email addresses here. And now connect using Azure AD test user from SQL Access Control Lab. Repeat, you should now see the email addresses masked. So after enabling the masking feature, when we connect from non-administrator user and try to see the first 1,000 rows of that table, so we will that user will not be able to see those that specific column which we masked. So let's test that out now. And if we go there, so there's that database here, and then in the database we need to go down to dynamic data masking. So that's pretty straightforward. It's just there. First we go there to dynamic data masking. Then this is where it is showing that what table you want to sales LT, and then customer is a table, and then what column of that you want to mask, the first name column, last name column, email address column, or any other column. So it's pretty straightforward. Whatever you want to add masks to, it will add mask, and then you can just click save. But this is SQL users excluded from masking. Administrators are always excluded. So it clearly says here that internal SQL users, from which we corrected the first time, and the administrators both will be excluded by default from masking. So this means that non-administrators, as soon as they connect, they should be, whatever we click the add mask to will be masked for those particular users. So we click the add mask, we press OK, and then we connect to that database, go for SSMS, select top 1,000 rows, and first of all we see that yes, we can see the email addresses. Then we connect from that user, and then it should be XXXXX like this. So let's do that now and confirm that does it really work or not. So I'm gonna go to this database. So this is the SQL Server tab there, and this is the database tab here. And in the database tab, what we can see is if we go further down here, so you can see here dynamic data masking. So, and it's pretty straightforward, you get the idea already. So within that table, what you see here is that there's add mask, there's add mask, there's add mask here. So SQL users excluded from masking, administrators are always excluded. It just shows that as well. If I go for your first name 07, so it does not, it just says that at least one masking rule is required to enable dynamic data masking. So I'm just gonna remove that. Instead of that, I'm just gonna click that add masks to email addresses or whichever column you want. So I'm just gonna click that add mask here. As soon as the add mask is there, so it just shows here up now that what we have selected. So default value is zeros or X's, and the date is there, but mask function, it's just showing here that it's this column will be masked. And I'm just going to click the save button here and press O and K. And that's once we save it, then what we can do is we can just and we refresh. There's no refresh. Okay, so we don't need to, but we can just disconnect and connect, although I have disconnected from that user. So right now, if I refresh first of all from an administrator user that I'm logged in from, right? If I refresh that, and I'm still logged in from obviously administrator, and we know that administrators will be able to see that. So since we have added the masking for that table already, for the column of that table already, so does administrator get to see that or not? We know that they will. Administrator will be able to, and then we're going to go for then that user, and so administrator sees the email addresses. Now I'm just gonna still connect while we are still connected from that administrator. I'm gonna try to make a new connection, but of that user, your first name 07, which is an end user or non-administrator, and I'll connect through that. So this is the connection with that user. So I'll collapse the above one. So this is the end user here. If I hover the mouse over there at the end, it says with the pop-up. So I'm just gonna go for databases and then the custom database and tables and radical customer. So yes, email address is masked. So that's very good, really cool feature and so straightforward. You just click, and for non-administrators now. So hackers obviously would know that too. And even if they gain access with some developer who has less privileges or non-administrator privileges, normally developers have admin privileges, but if any user that they hack and has non-administrator privileges, then suppose you can just mask pretty much every column here, and they won't be able to grab any feature from there, or any query they read with that privilege, they won't be able to get any results. So that's database masking. It's kind of really straightforward and not a lot of effort there, but we just need to know where it is and how to use it. So other than that,
This user is also not be accessible to master database as well. I mean, when we just log in with that user, uh, the user is not able to access the master database as well. I mean, I think the admin can only see the master database, right?
so if we go to the master, so and there are obviously this is just the master database is supposed to be the a copy or the template of databases, and the end user. So I'm logged in from end user, and the end user should not be able to run any query successfully, as we tested already. Definitely, the end user should not be
I
able to see
think
the results.
you are connected to both of the user because yeah, that is for the admin or
If I hover the
yeah.
mouse over there, the pop-up at the end of the pop-up says your first name 07.
Oh, but
So I cannot
I
see
don't
that.
see.
I,
Yeah.
no, if you're saying that I am connected through administrators, and I'm also connected to that user, so administrator rights come to that user as well, or that's why I'm able to see
Okay.
that. So that's not the DB reader rights are given there, so that user is able to read still, because we gave the right of
Okay.
DB readers. But otherwise, yes, they
Right.
should not be able to, if it has no basic rights as well, other than the grant
Yeah.
and connect.
Right.
Okay, so here, the masking is done, and end user, the non-administrator user, is not able to see that particular column there. And if we go ahead with our next one, this is just like we went for, discovery and vulnerability assessment. So Azure SQL Advanced Data Security is discovery and classification, and then there is vulnerability assessment, and then advanced threat protection as well. And in that, what we see is automated data discovery and classification, data labeled with security classifications. That is done automatically, and we're going to do that now just to check that how automatically the data is classified with the vulnerability assessment. So first it does the vulnerability assessment, and then it recognizes some of the areas that need to be classified as more critical or less critical. So if we go ahead and check that out, so what's the lab then? Automated data discovery and classification. Well, what does it do basically? data labeled with security classification. So it automatically goes through columns and rows and tries to then put security classification there according to the type of data and whatever in vulnerability assessment they have put there. Suppose there's a data that is having credit card information. Suppose there's a data that is supposed to be some other kind of ID. So those are all added criterias by Microsoft. So we're going to check that what in the vulnerabilities assessment, what exactly they considered as vulnerable. How do they determine that this is classified to be security sensitive and this not? So we're going to check that out. Manage SQL information protection labels in Security Center. Well, in Security Center, we went there and checked a lot of options in one of the classes. Labels included in Azure SQL auditing tags as well. So when you're labeling that, it is confidential. So in the auditing also, it shows there. And view dashboard in Azure portal and download detailed results. So we're going to try to check it out that how does it all really work. And we're going to start with vulnerability assessment. And there is a scan that we can run there, SQL vulnerability assessment and detailed recommendations. So there's a high risk failures, there's medium risk failures and low risk failures. Then database owners are as expected. Minimal set of principles should be, so whatever recommended security configurations should be there, best practices, it's gonna just check those best practices for databases and report to us that okay, you're not following best practices, and then it can also, the good thing is it can offer you a remediation. That's the best part there. Not only that it's reporting that, but there's a remediation there as well, that hey, you want to implement that best practice. If you think you need to go through that details, that what it's going to do. Suppose it says that oh, you don't have two owners accounts there, you just have one owner account. If that is if you're logged out from that, you're stuck. So suppose it creates a second owner account, right? So you should see the details as well, that what it's going to do in terms of remediation there. Or remediation just means implementation of best practices. So if you go for SQL vulnerabilities, well, let's just go ahead a little. SQL Advanced Threat Protection example is alerts. So SQL injection attack, and then there is access from unusual location. There is also access from unusual user identity, and then brute force SQL credential attack. So there are these types of typical attacks that the SQL Advanced Threat Protection tries to give an alert for us that hey, this type of attack is going on. So if we go ahead and try to check out first what's going on. So there's enter SQL Advanced Data Security is ensure, it's not entered. Ensure SQL Advanced Data Security is turned on, so that's a lab. Enter email address to receive alerts. View vulnerability assessment for AdventureWorks database. Configure SQL auditing and logging. View data discovery and classification for AdventureWorks. Accept recommendations and view results. So whatever is recommended by vulnerability assessment, you can actually implement that as well with a button, and it's going to implement all that as well. So, but sometimes when we implement best practices, we might be, we just need to know that what exactly got configured. So we should not be caught off guard there. That oh, we didn't know that, or I didn't know that. Oh, this was also implemented by the best practices. So view SQL information protection labels in Security Center. So these are the things that we're going to do now and try to check that what's going on. So make sure advanced data security is on inside the SQL server. So I'm just going to go through a few slides there so then we can follow. So we're going to go to the SQL server now. And so we're going to check that in SQL Server and Advanced Data Security that this option is enabled. So during the wizard, obviously, we enabled that option already, so it should be enabled. But what we need to do is we need to put our email for the send scan reports. When we do a vulnerability assessment scan, at that time, where to send the report, so you can just put an email there as well. So we're going to do that, and we're going to save that, right? The second thing is that we're gonna go for the database itself, and there's an advanced data security there in database, and in the database we're gonna go for vulnerability assessment, and inside the vulnerability assessment we can just click the scan there. So let's try to reach all that from the scan. Then it just tells you that, oh, we're executing a scan of what kind of vulnerabilities are there in our data center, a database. And well, we can also collect that information with the help of auditing here inside SQL Server, and we can create a log analytics workspace there to collect all the report from vulnerability assessment. So let's reach till here first, and let's reach the vulnerability scan. So the first step would be that we would just go to the SQL Server and make sure that it is on and that our email is there for the scan report, and then we'll click save. So I'm in SQL database. I'm just going to go to that table there, and I'll just simply check that result. Okay, so it is just saying that there's a final exam going on for 100 students on the other side. So it was from 8 o'clock till 9 o'clock. So they have just given their final quiz, and they're saying, hey, where's the result for that? Where's the incorrect and correct? So I'm just writing them, it will be available at 9 p.m. Okay, so yeah, I'll just come back here. And so what we need to do here is SQL servers, and then we're going to go down here, and first of all, what we need to do is it's advanced data security, and here, yes, it is on. Advanced data security costs $19 CAD per server per month, and it includes data discovery and classification. Yeah. So periodic recurring scans, yes, keep doing those scans once a week. So it's going to do those vulnerability scan once a week. In most cases, it will be on the day vulnerability assessment has been enabled and saved. So today we will enable that, so it's going to be saved. The first day it's going to run a scan against our databases. A scan result summary will be sent to the email address provided. So what we can do is we can just put our email address there, academy@gmail.com, and I'll just copy paste that. So under that, advanced threat protection settings, so send alerts to this as well. So you will be sent alerts for that as well. And advanced threat protection types, all types are there. If we go further down here, so if I click that advanced threat types there, so what kind of advanced threats you want report about. So SQL injection vulnerability, data exfiltration, unsafe action, brute force, and anomalous client login. So what is SQL injection? So what is it? If we go, well, I've put some on my LMS, some of the information about SQL injection. Okay, let me just grab that. What? Okay, so I'll just get another link. Okay, I'll just open here. SQL injection. So there are some nice videos there as well, and there's a nice link that explains a bit much easier than many others who have talked about it. So structured query language is a language designed to manipulate and manage data in a database. Okay, SQL. Since its inception, SQL has steadily found its way into many commercial and open. Yeah, it's famous. And SQL injection is a type of cybersecurity attack that targets these databases using specifically crafted SQL statements to trick the systems into doing unexpected and undesired things. So, how do you inject those? This guy has explained that if you have less than 5 minutes, yeah, blah blah blah. So, I'm just gonna put that there. But what you can achieve from SQL injection is bypass authentication, exfiltrating, stealing data, modifying your corrupting data, modifying or corrupting your data, deleting data, running arbitrary code, gaining root access to the system itself. Seriously. So what is left now? Nothing. So you can pretty much do everything. So obviously, SQL injection would, if you have not prepared your database. So I'm just going to put that website link there. That is a very, in just less than 5 minutes, it explains you. Yep.
So how they attack the SQL injection attack?
So
They attack what?
yeah. So there. That's why I put that other video here as well, and that really shows actually what happens. And it's a less than 1 minute video. Hopefully, it will be. I will be able to run, and then when I upload this to the YouTube, so they don't file a copyright to me that I am running somebody's. So there's that video, and I'll just quickly explain. It's like 2 minute video. So SQL injection, what is that? If you have some well-crafted scripts there, so suppose, and it says, let's see an example. I'll just put that there as well. So there's a username, password. This is a sample web application, a typical bank, right? So let's log in from a valid user. So this user is logging in from a valid user from a bank site, suppose. Let's see what the web application does. So what it's doing is the web application looks for an account with the given username and password in the database, and that is the username. So select ID from account where username equals Flozano and password this. So it just gets the information. So account is found. If it finds the account in the database, it just simply goes for, hey, okay, let me just let that user log in. So some of the databases are configured that way. So if we go ahead now, and one day when there's going to change that. So it goes to the dashboard and logs out. Now he's going to try to use, we perform a SQL injection attack. So this is a very simplest form of attack right now. So admin or 1 equals 1 and dash dash. So it is just, that person has just put that information there. And if that database has not, no, this guy has successfully logged in with just putting that statement there, right? 1 equals 1 dash dash. We are successfully authenticated as a valid user. So what happened if your databases are not really patched? So they will be vulnerable for these kind of, this is just one small type of attack or just an example. So what happened? Then it says that you type that simple statement and it worked. So the web application executes this query, select ID from account where username admin or 1 equal 1 and dash dash and password is this. So it just says that, oh, this is whatever the username you put there is actually, I find it there already. So account is found and accepted. So the rest of the statement that the user put there back there, it says that, hey, if you found my username in the database, just let me in. So if the database is not patched, it doesn't have that vulnerabilities already taken care of, so it will simply execute or let you log in from that database by this statement where it says that if you have found my username in the database, just let me in, and it will just let it in. Oh yeah, I found you. Okay, thank you. So if the obviously this statement would be coming up from those who knows database inside out, and they would have made some more queries just from the username when they put that, and they get access. So what they say here is never string concatenate user controlled input straight in the SQL query. So string concatenate user controlled input. So if you go for what is string concatenate, right? So it says here, in formal language theory and computer programming, string concatenation is the operation of joining character strings end to end. For example, the concatenation of snow and ball is snowball. So if this character is there, then obviously this will be the second one. If you join them together, so if the SQL injection guys, they can just put one first character there, the username, and then put some query there that actually tells the database that yes, I have provided you the password, or the next what you're expecting, I have provided you that already. So let me in. So database says, oh, okay, you provided me, okay, you're in now. So that's just a simplest form of SQL injection. And the video just shows you. This also explains, but this video that we saw is the best, simplest we can say, in explaining that how SQL injection really works. Right? They can just go for vulnerabilities in database. If you haven't patched those, good luck with your databases. So and there are hundreds of those queries. This is the simplest one with an unpatched database. Right, so hopefully we get that. So if we go ahead with what we were doing in SQL, yeah, so it says advanced threat protection type. So you want to be alerted about SQL injection, and SQL injection in the vulnerability, an application vulnerability to SQL injection was exploited, or an application vulnerability to SQL injection was detected. So either it was already done, or it was just detected, or somebody was just querying. So all that reporting we need there. So I'm just gonna press OK here. That give me the scan results of all that what you find in the vulnerability assessment. So if I click the save button here, so it's already on. We just added the email, and then we are saving it. So then the next tasks will be that we can go to the database itself and go to advanced data security, and then we launch a scan for vulnerability assessment now. So after this, if the advanced data security is enabled on the SQL Server level, you can go to the database level and launch that scan for vulnerability assessment, and it will then go for findings and past. So what kind of known vulnerabilities are there, and okay, it's done. So I'm just going to go for the database side here, and I'll just do a refresh on the browser level. And then I'll just go down to advanced data security here. So there's that vulnerability assessment. Initiate a new scan for your database. It already says that, and I'm just going to click that and click scan to scan your database for vulnerabilities. So I'm going to click that scan here. So it's going to check. Obviously we did not really do any kind of well, not all kind of protections were enabled there, so it's going to find some, and it's good that it is going to find. Okay, so well, there are findings are 6, so this is the default one. High risk are 2, medium is 1, low risk is 3, and the 2 high risks are auditing should be enabled at the server level. So well, that was the other option other than the vulnerability assessment. So we can enable that and then run the assessment, and you can find that it is being done. And server level firewall rules should be tracked and maintained at a strict minimum. So we have enabled those firewall rules there, and if I click on top of that firewalls, so it says the same thing, strict minimum, and should set an initial baseline, and then it says the Azure SQL Server level firewall helps protect your data by preventing all access to your databases until you specify which IP address have permission. Server level firewall rules grant access to all databases that belong to server. So it just says that go for server level firewall and try to enable it and just give permissions to those who really require that. There's a query there, start IP address, end IP address. You can just add any IP address that should be only connected there. And there's that run in query editor. And small ABC below ABC shape 1, 2, 3, dot shape 1, 2, 3. So it says execute sp delete firewall rule, and then there is that allow all Windows Azure IPs. So it says that and client IP address on that date. So within the
But if we delete those, then we will not be able to access from the client IP, which is from our machine. And initially, we said that all the resources from Azure can connect to this database, right?
so actually
But
yeah, you were saying?
yeah, but we can do that. I mean, we can approve those two rules as a baseline. I think that will help us to remove this alert.
Exactly. So anything delete, obviously, we should not run at all unless we are sure that what it's doing is. So definitely it says allow all Windows Azure IPs there. So definitely, as you said, also that it's going to delete all the allowed IPs. Obviously, our IP was the only one that was allowed, right? So that's why it's concerned. We still have to check that how is it concerned when we have only allowed, but obviously we allowed that whole option at the start of the course. If we go for that SQL server and in the firewalls and virtual machines, so this is right now deny public network access, that's the first one, and TLS, then the connection policy is default, and allow Azure services and resources to access this server. Connection from the IP specified below provides access to all the databases in this. So this is some we have already added that IP, right? So if I click that no, what will happen now? Do you know what will happen now?
Yeah, it will only give you one firewall rule, which is the client IP address which we are actually accessing right now. So that need to be deleted. So, but what I am saying, I mean, we can allow these Azure services, and we can also have this client IP address. But what we can do, we can just approve these alert access as a baseline. I think that should remove that alert.
Yes. So, well, first of all, yes, according to its recommendation, what we have is already configured. I mean, like what they wanted is already configured. If I click save here, will this work now? If will I still be connected? If I click that, no.
Yeah, that you will still be connected, but
Yeah.
they will only give you one error. I mean, one error that is only the client IP. That's it.
So I'll just connect with admin now, and so I'll just minimize that, and now I can just run that scan again. Do not give access to all Azure services. Client IP should be approved. Yes, exactly. So if I go back, oh, was I there? Oh, sorry. Okay, I'll just go down here again. And scan again. You know, creating that workspace, it will not be deleted for 14 days. That's not good. I mean, like we're about to enable auditing, and for that, it also needs. Okay, while it is doing that, if I go to next, because it also asks us to go to, we can just enable auditing later in the SQL Server, and there, when you enable auditing, you have to actually create a workspace there. Once you create a workspace, obviously you need to create a new workspace there, and it gets created. After that, data discovery classification. So this will give you a report as well. It will say that, hey, in your columns, we identified that some of the data needs to be classified as, for security reasons, it needs to be classified. So we're gonna enable auditing later, and then at that time we'll talk about that. Right now, what we were doing was that if we, okay, it's done. Yeah, both are there still. So yeah, we need to, as you said, so server level firewalls rules should be tracked and made.
Yeah, if you click that, then you will see in the top approve as baseline in the top left corner.
Yeah, approve
Yeah,
as
so you
baseline.
can approve that as a baseline. Yeah, yeah, this
Also,
one.
there
So
were
that,
two here lines. One was the delete line that is gone now. So
yeah, because you just switch off all the Azure uh, uh, apps need to be accessed with
all
this
that.
database. So you just switch it off. Yeah.
So one of that query demands were met, but one is not. But there's that approve as baseline is also there should set an initial baseline. So it says there, and I did do that right successfully. Okay. So if I go back here and run that scan again, okay, so it's gonna take some time. Okay, that is gone exactly. So now there's only one left. Auditing should be enabled. So let's enable that auditing as well. 5 total failing 5 now 6. So others are sensitive data columns should be classified. Minimal set of principals should be members of fixed low impact database roles. Track all users with access to database and track all users with access to the database. So this is for master and this is for the custom, and but this threat level is low, although it's still a threat. And there's a medium one, sensitive data columns should be classified. So if we go for auditing, if we go for SQL Server there, and in the SQL Server there's a auditing as well there. So if you click auditing, so auditing is not enabled, so it's saying that, hey, why auditing is not enabled. So we can go to auditing and turn it on, and there is that audit logs destination. So choose at least one. So either you go directly for just the storage or event hub, or as we know that log analytics, and this is a workspace where it can collect all the log files. There is a workspace already there in my case, but if you're following, then you can just create one there. So that workspace actually is not getting deleted. It's going to get deleted in 14 days. You have a free trial, maybe you have 14 days, so you will not be charged some cents. So if I select that workspace and click save, yeah, workspace, log analytics workspace, we talked about that before as well. So there you can collect all the log files and analyze those log files and download from there as well. So it's a collection of all the performance logs and audit logs as well. I'm just wondering, where does it store? Oh, it's on this. It's gonna create a storage account, and we're gonna be charged that too. So you're creating storage account for just that, and yeah, so that's a separate charge. Okay. So here, well, we saved it, and we saved it, right? Or shall I save it again? Oh, it's there. Yeah, so if we saved it, then we can go ahead and so the next steps would be this. So once we save it, or we are here now, we create workspace as well, blah blah blah. Yeah, done. So we can come back to the database and go for data discovery and classification. This one, and recommended columns to classify. And if you've heard about GDPR, that is on the European side, the internet data rules there that they have implemented a few years ago. So according those standards will be met for databases, and it will try to classify any information according to those standards. We have found 15 columns with classification and recommendations. So it's going to go column wise, and it's going to then ask that accept selected recommendations. So what the recommendations are here, it's going to. So it says, you can see that sensitivity label would be changed. It is confidential, that's going to put there as sensitivity, or classify it as a confidential. And so, well, first name, phone, password, hash, we're going to check that out, what that is. So what we need to do now is, once the auditing is enabled, we can come back to database and advanced data security and enable actually, or go for data discovery and classification. So if I go to the database area again and go out of this area and go for data discovery classification, so I click that. Oh, sorry. Yeah. I'm in database and not in auditing. Wow, it's not. Come on, load.
Sir, actually, we can enable this auditing at server level and at database level as well, right, sir?
Both. But it has to be run. The classification has to be run on the database level. Oh, what am I doing? Okay, yeah. So it can be enabled on this level and that level. Exactly. So, but it is saying server level auditing is enabled. I think this is changed now. So this means, yeah, now I'm able to do that. Well, I think it's refresh. I didn't enable it on the database level, but it's now refreshed. So here it sees that we have found 15 columns with classification recommendation. It's the same database, same table. If it was a different table, it would have found a different set of columns there that needs. Is it not the advanced? Yes, it is the advanced, exactly. So I went for advanced here, and it was not clickable for a moment. Then I went back again, it was clickable. So there, overview. So what we can do is, we can just click that recommendation first of all. What is the recommendation and what are you trying to classify here, right? So it says here classification, and it says there that first name, last name, email address, phone. If we go there, up to city, postal code, address type, and text amount. But if I go to the actual table here, and databases, and so were there more columns than this? Did it just identify all the columns as needed to be classified? So if I go to customer here and go to top 1000 rows,
You can see on the top, like title, first name, middle name.
yeah, these are all the columns. But were those all, or were there different? I think there are more than 15, but there would be all. So we go for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So pretty much all the columns are considered to be. Yeah, 15. So all should be considered are considered to be confidential. It will classify them as confidential. So classification just means that it's putting kind of label. Not kind of. It's gonna put a label there that, hey, these are supposed to be. This is sensitive information. Pretty much what it's saying there, right? So 15 columns. So we have to select all, or it has recommended that, right? So we say no, not everything is confidential. Come on, man. So yes, email is confidential, or maybe password hashes are confidential information. And what else? So you don't have to select all because of their recommendation, but and they say that European standards recommend that first name last name is GDPR, means European centers there, or European standards there for the internet and data. So and address, okay, yes, address is especially sensitive. So mark whatever you want to mark, or you can select all. It's up to you, right? So but the recommendation is that all these columns are actually supposed to be. So it recommends that, but if you're in Europe, then obviously these two, and the rest. But we can select it ourselves, and it says accept selected recommendation. So you can select all, or you can select whatever you want. Up to you. So suppose we went for few and accept. So it just says that sensitivity label is confidential. There are other labels. There's public, there's general, there's confidential GDPR, highly confidential, and then highly confidential GDPR. GDPR just European standards. So you want to classify them, or these are just, you just follow the recommendations, or follow all recommendations, or just few of the recommendations that you can accept as yes, mark them as confidential, right? And once we click save here, so those are then saved, right? So this is if we go back here, so it shows we selected 5 here, and this is it has labeled them as confidential. If I go back to vulnerabilities, well, it's already 3 showing here, but if I go down here, so there is that auditing and logging high, and we can just run a scan. And okay, so maybe it meant so medium level is there, and sensitive data column should be specified, approved as baseline. There's a query here, and it says in addition, access to sensitive data should be more tightly controlled. Built-in SQL security capabilities like always encrypted data, dynamic data masking, and row-level security can be used to control access and protect data. So, well, these are click here to remediate. There's a remediate here as well, and that remediation takes us back there. And 10 columns with classification is there. So yes, we were here, we could have selected all, and we should have actually, but we know that we can. That's main thing, and we can just approve that as a baseline as well. So this one, sensitive data columns should be classified, but we didn't make any changes. Once we make changes and come back, then we can just make it as a baseline. But the thing is that, guys, address line is not showing here, right? Yeah, what we selected there, so we should have selected all. That's what it seems like. What they recommended, they find it vulnerable. Then they should have been. So guys, this is pretty much what I had. So if we go further here, so that's what I was able to come up with the labs. There is a lot of theory there as well, but theory can sometimes there's a full books there out there as well, but that was some of the labs that I was trying to configure, and if there are any questions, let me know. And there will be future labs also coming. I'm going to be doing a full SQL and Exchange course on Exchange. You have the SQL course I'll be doing in Georgetown as well. So I have to come up with all that, 2 SQL instances and high availability of SQL and everything. mirroring and all those. Mirroring is actually discontinued, but 2014, 2012. So 2016 based SQL on Azure. So I have to create the whole course there. So just remind me and I'll just add you to those videos. So that's it, guys, from my side. So, okay, guys, this was a nice, a lot of off days were there. Sorry about that, but I was just trying I was having some challenge there for the labs, and without labs, it's no fun doing any course. So, okay, and hopefully we meet in some other course as well. Thank you, and I learned also, frankly speaking, many of the things you discovered and shared with us. So, thank you very much. All right.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Sorry, Amir, when the VMware will be start?
VMware is starting after 2 weeks now.
After 2 weeks, okay. Okay, please let me know if you don't mind. Okay, thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it.
Sir,
Thank you.
before we end this session, I want to ask one question which is not related to this topic, but you can stop video if you want. I mean, recording if you want.